My name is Dominica McGinnis. I am the CEO of Bastrop Law Group, where we do estate planning and real estate services and help people protect their assets, help business owners like you protect your assets that you've worked so hard to develop. I'm also an executive coach, and we'll hear a little bit about the role of coaching in some of our business owners' businesses and lives later on. We're excited to be here today. I am not going to do a traditional panel where we ask a question and give each person a turn to talk. This is going to be more like a fireside chat. And so you guys are going to be here listening, and we're going to have a conversation, even though we're in a row. We're going to have a conversation. So I'm going to ask our panelists to jump in when they have something to add. So we might interrupt each other a little bit or step on each other. But we have a lot of information we want to get to you, so we're going to get started. My first thing that I'm going to ask each of you to do in a row, though, is to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your companies, and then we will get started.
My name's Tim Kimbro. I'm the president of TCS Mechanical, headquartered here in Bastrop. We also have offices in San Antonio, Albuquerque, and soon to be Boise. We employ a little over 600 people right now. And we are a full service plumbing, mechanical, process piping, and ductwork company.
Steve Todee. Ooh, boy, that worked good.
You're good.
Copper Shot Distillery and CNS Cigars. We're a small local distillery in our growing stage right now, so this is kind of perfect for us. We make everything but tequila, so you want to come have a nice drink, it's us.
Howdy, my name is Bryan Bracewell. My wife Rachel and I own Southside Market and Barbecue. Southside's the oldest barbecue joint in the state of Texas, started in 1882. My grandparents bought the business in 1968. I started working there when I was 12. And took a 4-year break, go to Texas A&M, learn meat science, came back home to be a meathead. And small business stuff took over, and I'm sitting here. We have 5 barbecue restaurants. The second one was opened here in Bastrop in 2014. We've got a catering business, an e-commerce shipping business, and we distribute our products to grocery and restaurants, across the state of Texas. And so that's us.
Yeah, so what's really neat about this panel, and I'm so impressed with whoever put it together, I think, thank you, Becky and Dory, is that we have people who are growing locally, and as they expanded, it's growing from one business location to the next. Those who are going a little more regionally in our county, and then growing out of the state. So kind of representative wherever you may be in your business, you will have plenty of experience here. So let's jump in. I love to start with questions that are easy. So let's do the easy one first and get it out of the way. What's been the most fun about growing your business?
Well, of course, income.
Say it loud.
So, of course, income,
Yeah, that's the motivation for most of us, right?
As you develop a customer base, just the people you get to learn and know, and like I say, everybody we've met through the city, and you end up with a lot of friends. So
Yeah. Tim?
I would say the freedom, as a lot of you small business owners know, you start a company and then you realize that, now I'm working 20, 22 hours a day trying to take care of everything. I don't have a lot of freedom, but as things grow and get established, you do get to have some unique opportunities. And the second thing I would say would be the rewarding part of it is seeing employees achieve and grow and blossom, and that's a really cool part of it too.
I think for me, the fun has been the continuous learning experience of, starting mom and pop, and still trying to stay mom and pop, but learn how to operate a little bit higher level than that, which is, some days we do, some days we don't. But for me, it's been the continuous learning process, and then building a team. It looks like sausage and barbecue for me the last 30 years, 25 years. But really, it's about building a team. And so sometimes, again, we win, sometimes we don't on that too.
Brian, you had a kind of a unique experience because your business has actually been in existence for about 100 years, right? What made you decide to grow at that point? I mean, you could have left it, it's obviously successful. What made you decide to change?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't ever remember making the decision to join the business, to do this for my living. I grew up in it. I just always, it's part of who I am. And so I just made my plans in life and my education and what I thought I needed to learn to be able to come and contribute back home with the family. And so my grandfather had moved the business from downtown Elgin out to the highway in 1992. I came along full-time in 98, and so for him, that was kind of the top of the mountain. He'd grown the business at that point in time. And all through my childhood, I'd seen people come in and, say, oh, this is great. You should grow. You should do this. You should do that. And he'd always say, my dad would always say, yep, we're going to do that. Yep, we're going to do that. But it never happened. For him, the top of the mountain was 92, and that was a big bite and really changed the course of the business. And if he wouldn't have done that in 1992, there wouldn't have been enough for me to come home to. And so that was very fortunate for me. And so when I got home, then I just felt like, okay, this opportunity was provided to me, and so I need to look at our potential and try to reach that potential for the sake of the business, for the sake of the people in the business, for the sake of my family. And so I can't really say that there was a defined decision of, yep, we're going to grow. It's just been part of the culture of the way I was raised, I guess, or the way we've been.
Any other family-owned businesses out here? Yeah. Very cool. So here's your man.
We've always had Christmas dinner together, so but we haven't always agreed.
And Tim, also, when you had a very unique experience as well, when we did a pre-call and when we talked a little bit, tell us a little bit about how your growth happened.
It's interesting. We didn't, last year in 2024 in the Central Texas area alone, we worked over 1 million man hours, making us the largest mechanical contractor in the area. I can tell you in 2017 when we started the company, that was never part of the business plan or even something we thought was a remote possibility. And so I think the point of all that is things evolve and change from, where you are and where you don't really ever know where you might wind up. And, but you have to be adaptable and willing to change.
And that's what I told Tim. I said, everyone's going to love you because, we all have business plans and they don't go the way we plan, and it's okay. And you just kept adapting and growing, right?
Yeah, my idea of TCS Mechanical when we started it was I was going to keep 15 to 20 guys that had worked with me for decades.
And how many people do you have now?
Over 600.
Didn't exactly plan on that.
No, and it's been a wild ride.
And Steve, I know that Copper Shot, you've got regulatory challenges. How many of you have a lot of regulatory issues in your companies? Okay, Steve is a person who knows how to get past some of those.
Right.
How have you grown with your regulatory challenges?
Well, our biggest thing is not only do we deal with state, we also deal with federal. And federal is a big bear. It's kind of tough to deal with. But right now we're battling issues statewide. So like these guys, they can open up multiple places. We cannot. We're restricted right now to where the distillery has to be attached to the tasting room. And it's only in the distilling world. Beer and wine, they can do what they want. We're just still that old prohibition regulations that we're under, which we're trying to change now. We're working our way through it, trying to, go to the legislation level and push for some changes. as of right now, Texas is the only state that is like that still. So the Grand State is still holding us back. But we're getting there and trying to get creative how to grow in our footprint because we can't grow outside of it. And it's offering some challenges. And like I say, we're overcoming them slowly, but it's not easy.
Okay. I'd like to ask each of you, as you've grown, you hit an inflection point in your businesses. What was the hardest part, or what would you do differently? Hindsight's 2020, right?
Well, like me, I'm in the downtown area, and so being restricted, I wish I had started with a bigger place so that I'd have more footprint to grow on, because I can't get outside the confines of where I'm at now.
My biggest mistakes, I believe, have been in taking a bite on something that's hard to unravel, like overhead, or, once you build it, you better fill it up, because that doesn't go away. So having your fixed cost outrun, normally your business, you can grow it like this, but from a cost structure, you hit a plateau. It's a big jump to make that investment. And so while your sales are doing this, if your cost outrun your sales, then, cash is king. If you don't have cash, you're done. Doesn't matter how good your idea is. And so, for me, what I would do different is just make sure that every investment is something that is going to, you do your best guess. So is it going to pay off or not? But, it's okay to grow small and grow slow. And, if you take a big bite, you better be ready to swallow.
It's
Yeah.
hard to, when you talk about mistakes, which one is kind of, I think, we spoke yesterday and the best advice that I've ever been given was by a mentor of mine named Paul Kim. And I asked him in our second year of business we'd set our goals for the company, and I asked him, what should my goals be? And this guy owns a lot of companies all over the world. And he said, well, let me ask you a question. He said, are you building a business or are you building a prison? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, a lot of people go into business thinking they're building a business, but they're actually building a prison for themselves because they can't get away from it and they can't leave. And at the time, that's exactly what I was doing because my hands had to be in absolutely everything in that company for it to function on a day-to-day. He said, your goal needs to be, you need to be able to leave the country for 30 days and have very limited contact with your office. And when you come back, have everything running just like it would.
I wish.
And we weren't there. It took 2 years for us to get there. But then we did that, and we went to Africa, and we were in some really remote places. And I would call my office, and they would be like, everything's fine, just enjoy your trip, don't worry about anything. And I'd get off the phone, and I'd tell my wife, they're lying. It's never fine when I'm there. So how is it fine now? When we get home, we're bankrupt. That's just, but everything was great. And so I think that would be it, initially building a prison for myself. And
When I first heard that comment from you, it hit like a gut punch, right? How many of you went, ouch, I'm building a prison? Yeah, a few hands are going up, right? I was like, amen, that'll preach.
Well, it's funny though, is this summit right now is we're kind of in that prison right now because we need to grow. And you try to figure out when you need to grow. We need to grow so that we can get out of that prison. I need the staffing so that I can take a step back.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's those little key factors,
And that's that inflection point, right?
Yeah.
It's like if I don't grow, then I'm stuck in the prison cell.
Yeah.
So how do I grow and get out of it, and yet still have the resources? And so, what'd you do? That's what everyone wants to know, right? What did y'all do?
Yeah, tell me.
Well, finding, one, you're so invested into it. It's your baby that you've built. And you got to transition from being a doer inside your own organization to being a manager. And to do that, you've got to hire the doers, and then you've got to empower them and trust them to make decisions and do things. And you kind of got to do it knowing they're not always going to make the right decision, but that's okay as long as we learn and grow from it. Because if you're talking about building it, and that's the other, what are you building with your company? Are you building a legacy company that you're going to pass down, multi-generational? Is it something that one day you're going to market and sell? Well, if you're the big doer in the company, what do you have to sell? Because if you leave and that company can't thrive and exist without you, you don't have something really marketable. So you have to kind of transition, and you do that by hiring people and coaching people and training people and taking a little bit of a risk.
I mean, it's funny though, is just hitting on that is like us, my wife and I, we're the face of our business. And so it's like, how do we take Copper Shot and it run its own face where we don't have to be present? And we're toying with that. And like I said, it's part of that growth again is figuring out how to pull back, still be the face, but it's its own entity.
I found you on the beach yesterday.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That 4 days we try to get away, and my poor wife's on the phone the whole time dealing with staff problems, and it's like, okay, how do we break away from this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that for you, as we talked, you talked a lot about your data and using data as you grow.
Yeah. She's big on a journal. She's got daily of where our numbers are during holidays, what our sales were like, so that we can project. We're 9 years in now, and now we can look back and she can go, okay, we're coming up on 4th of July. How much do we need to stock so that the last thing is not have enough? So, ramping up on trying to make sure I've got enough bottles of each product that we mainly sell. And it helps in our growth too, because now we can look back and go, you know what, we're getting ready to not have enough capacity because of our volume. So it tells us everything that we need to know for the future is what we feel like. Yeah.
What about you, Steve? You're quiet down there. Bryan, sorry.
Excuse me, the process for growth for us was, I'm a product guy at heart, meat science, barbecue, all that stuff. And so creating something that people like and enjoy and you can sell, that's all nice and good, but is that scalable? And so for me, it was more about building a team of people that I could trust to do what I do or do what my family has done. And then creating the processes. I spent a couple of years, once I knew, okay, we're going to grow. And so for us, that looked like a separate location where I could go get new customers in a different market area. And so my biggest fear during that time was it's a Bastrop County, small community, was to hear on the street, yeah, it was pretty good when the grandpa had it, but when the grandson took over, that's when it went downhill. And so I spent a couple of years building processes and building the team, and before that, making sure we were profitable enough to have something that we could go and scale, and having resources to be able to build those processes and hire that team and train them at the home base. That way, my goal was when we opened the second store that we'd be stronger in both locations than in one. And so there was a lot of time and effort on the front end before we ever, fired the pit up. And for us, that's what we've done each time. My limiting factor for growth is our people, resources, of course, but the biggest part of that resource is not only cash, but people to be able to go out and do what we do and replicate what we do. And consistency is our biggest a goal, what we try to accomplish every day. So regardless of where you go, you're going to get treated the same, you're going to get the same meal, and you're going to feel good about it.
I think a key thing of what you said right there was, I think a key thing of what he just said was processes and being process driven. If you're going to grow it and transition from being a doer to a manager, you have to be process driven. That way, when you put people in these roles, they know exactly what to do and how to do it. And then, and as you develop that here, when you want to branch out, it's a lot easier because you just take those same processes. We call it a playbook, and we go, here's the playbook. And people have, they know what to do and how to do it.
And some of you have industries that you can kind of benchmark off of your playbooks. And I'm not sure, certainly for the restaurant business, you probably do. I know, Steve, you mentioned that, there's a growth curve for your business, and you're coming up upon that, right? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, so most businesses, the average is 5 years. You're peaking your growth. Well, distilleries are not. We run on an 8 to 12-year average, and it's because we're competing with every other bottle on the shelf. And so you're trying to grab that market. You're trying to grab that face, that person to try your product and go, hey, they're doing something unique. And where we're at right now is now our industry is taking a swing on us. So instead of going and buying that bottle, they want to buy that RTD, a ready-to-go drink. So now we're going, okay, we got to shift our whole mindset on our growth to RTDs. And so the drinks that everybody has gotten to know that they love us for when they come in, now we're trying to figure out how we can put that in a can so that you can grab that and drink it poolside at your house or at the lake or wherever. So yeah, we've got a whole shift here that we're trying to figure out. And we're right at our 10-year mark where we need to grow too. So we're trying to scale up, but also shift with the market at the same time. And it's becoming a bear.
And how do you make the decisions, all of you, to, for Tim and Bryan, consistency is key, and being able to replicate that team that can give the consistent product. For you, it's, grabbing market share. How do you make that decision about when to grow? When's the right time? Do I have the resources? Will I be able to sleep at night or ever get out, go to the beach again? How do you make those decisions? What did you use? What data did you use? What, throw a dart at the wall? Yeah,
like us, growth is when, I can't make enough alcohol where I'm at now. So I'm going to have to either add more stills, get a bigger still, something like that, where our process is consistent. I have to have a consistent process or my product is off, So just by the amount of people coming in and like how hard I've got to work to make enough alcohol to keep up, it kind of tells us, hey, we need to grow. We can't keep up where we're at. Of course, with us monitoring all of our data and seeing that, of course, we see it in our numbers. We see it in the amount of people that are moving to town. Our town is going through a major growth swing, and being part of that tourism really is starting to shine for us. So, yeah.
For me, I believe growth is a mindset, and so that decision was made a long time ago. And so every decision after that is going down that path. I don't know how to turn it off. Our limiting factor, our biggest limiting factor, is most challenging to overcome is people. And finding good folks that want to do what you do with excellence every day. And it's easier to attract good folks if they're coming into an exciting, thriving business that's growing. Everybody wants to be on the winning team. And so that's great once you get that rolling, but I don't want this to sound bad, but growth can be a little bit of a drug that you get addicted to. And so once that gets going, how do you turn it off? I don't know. I hadn't had that yet, because for me, it's been a mindset, and we're still going down that path. And so the little decisions, the big decisions, every decision in between is going down that path, going down that course of keeping us on a growth path and keeping the long term. We got to survive today, but we've got to set ourselves up in a situation that we can thrive long term as well. And so that's a good question. I don't know the exact answer.
For me, there's two things that I look at, because in the construction industry, there's a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of opportunities. So one, it's not just being a bigger company that's not it, right? Because 10% profit on $1 million is the same as 1% on $10 million. You're just taking on a whole lot more risk and working a whole lot harder to make less money. And that's not the goal. So can we take on this and growing cost? There's cost associated with it. So can we grow and still maintain our profit margins above the industry average? If we can't do that, there's no point. We're just working harder to make less money. And then the other thing is our customers. Can we maintain the level of performance that our customers have come to expect from us? If those two things, any one of those two things are off, there's no point in growing. We're just going to ultimately hurt ourselves. But if we can make those two things work, and it's kind of like, I think you do have to push your company. It's just like a NASCAR driver pushes his race car. And as the owner, when you're really pushing it and you start hearing the things rattle and shake apart, you got to be able to discern whether that's a minor rattle or are the wheels fixing to fall off. That's kind of our role. And those are two things that I use to gauge that.
How do you motivate the team? Because, Bryan, you said it, and Tim, you talked about it too. If that consistent product in your processes and being able to leave the country for 30 days, that takes a lot of motivation for a team. As a business owner, employees are some of the greatest challenges we have. They're the greatest asset, and they're also the greatest pain in the rear sometimes. And so how do you motivate your team to deliver? Train them up, motivate them?
For us, if that was my only job, or if I had to do that every single day, I would work myself to death. And so it starts way before that for us, of establishing a culture of who we are and how we're going to do business and who we're going to invite into that, and go out and select for that, and spend a lot more time on the recruiting and the decision-making process before they come on the team than you do after that, because that's key for us of finding folks who want to do what we want to do. We hire the person and teach the skills. And it's one of the things I learned from Mr. Howard a long time ago. Took a tour. Sometimes the best employee for him is not necessarily an artist, because they've got their own ideas of how they want to do, and it's somebody who wants to do what he wants them to do and can replicate what the artist has already created. And so for me, it's the same thing. I don't care what you do in your backyard. Go have fun, with barbecue and stuff. But when you're here, this is the way we do it. And so for me, we've got to set ourselves up for success by hiring folks that are easy to motivate, because what we already do is what they want to do. And that's a challenge, but that's when it fits, it's pretty sweet.
Do you have a resource that y'all utilize?
Speak into the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do y'all have a resource that you utilize to find employees that works best for you? Or how are you searching out these? Because y'all got a great staff. So it's like, how do y'all search them out,
For us, it's a multi-pronged approach. There's not one silver bullet. I've been looking for a silver bullet for and it's not out there. And so for us, it's every technology changes and services change. And so it's finding the next new thing and just trying to stay successful there. We do have in-house recruiters, but it's being flexible and adjusting with the market. I can't hire an 18-year-old the same way I hire a 55-year-old. Some of them answer the phone and some of them don't, and you need them all.
I think the company culture plays a big part in that. And you know, we have a workforce shortage in our country, and especially in my industry. So in order to get the right talent, we have to be a place that they want to come work and be a part of. And we do that in a variety of ways. But, you know, people always say they work. When someone says, I work for TCS or I work for you, I correct them and tell them they don't. You work with us. None of our employees get up in the morning thinking, man, I can't wait to get to work to make Tim Kimbro another dollar. That is not their motivation. Their motivation is themselves and their families and their kids. And if you can align yourself with that and give them a pattern, a path to achieve their own personal goals, one, they're going to work a whole lot harder for themselves than they ever will me. And then they feel like they're a part of something so much bigger. And our company is successful because of the people we have. And it's a byproduct of those people being successful in their own goals.
I know in our own firm, it's really important for us to feel like we are serving people and building relationships with people and helping them as they grow and to protect their families. And ultimately, you know, our employees, our team members, they want to protect their families and along with our customers and our clients, right? And so that's critical. We're coming along a point where we also want to give you, the audience, an opportunity to ask some of your questions. And so if you have questions, is there going to be someone with the microphone running? There's Dory. Dory will have the microphone, and she'll just raise your hand and she'll bring it to you. So we'll continue the conversation. If you have a question, just raise your hand and let Dory know. Let me ask a different question. What would you do differently? Any of you thought about that yet? What would you do differently now that you know what you know? As opposed to when it comes to growth, we'll put it that way.
Of course, with us, it's footprint. We
Footprint,
love where we're at. I wish I could have been more selective to have more room. And that's just because of our restraints of not being able to go elsewhere.
I think what I'd do differently is not expect perfection and not be too tough on myself when we screwed up, because that's going to happen. And I always have a plan B, but sometimes you need C, D, E, and F. And, you know, that's always, you know, you don't have to be defined by your adversity, but you will be defined exactly by the way you react to it. And that will be your legacy. And so expect it. It's coming, and it's not easy. And that's what this is all about. You know, it's part of the fun of it, really, is to overcome challenges. And so if you think that it's going to be easy, I don't think anybody thinks that. But if you think that you're not going to have to dig deep and go with plan B, C, or D, you're crazy too, in my opinion. And so looking back, shouldn't have been as hard on myself as far as the expectations of perfection. And when you roll the punches, that's okay. Get over it.
I've never been afraid to screw up, so yeah, I'll dive in. If I mess up, well, then it's about like what he's saying. I overcome it, but it makes me a stronger person because now nobody can say I don't know. No, I did it. I can tell you how to overcome that. So yeah.
Tim?
I would say waiting so long.
Waiting so long.
We started the company in 2017, but that's not when I started in the industry. I started in the industry in the 1990s. And now that would not have been the time to start the company. But I probably could have started it in the early 2000s. But I waited and waited. And then it's hard to take that initial
Jump.
I'm going to lose the steady paycheck and jump out here. And I wish I'd have done it earlier.
Yeah. As we run our company, I know one of the things that's challenging and I would have done differently. The first time I had to fire someone, that was hard because I waited too long. And, really getting a hold of company culture and what do we want that team to look like was really important to us. And so the hindsight 2020 is critical. And I told everyone, I said, we want them to learn from our mistakes and not make the same ones over and over again. So that's gold, right? As you think about kind of the challenges that are probably coming up, the changes, I know that in your industry, Tim, you talked a little bit about the fact that, and you haven't brought it out here, I'll bring it out for you, that you're one of probably 7 companies that can do what you do when it comes to, the industry that's coming up now
Yeah,
with technology.
Yeah, I have a huge background in semiconductor, and that's a large part of our business. And that was some feedback we got from a major client, was that there's thousands of contractors in the United States, but there's less than 7 that can do what your company can do. And that's they don't hand out compliments, so that meant a lot.
And he's really humble, so he didn't brag about it either.
But yeah, there's lots of challenges with that because there's a boom in that sector right now throughout the United States.
How do you decide whether you're going to capitalize on that boom?
It's so tough because we don't ever want to overcommit to a client and not be able to meet their or exceed their expectations. And it's tough because that market is evolving and changing, and there's new fabs being built in lots of different places, and we think we're going to Boise. That did change to Lehigh there for a while, and then it's been back and forth based upon where they're at on their construction needs, and then they're extremely large projects. We can only take on 1 or 2 $300 million project at a time. So we have to be really selective and picky about what that is, and it's challenging.
It's good to have options.
Yeah.
What as I mentioned earlier, Tim's there was some organic growth for you, opportunistic growth. The opportunity presented itself, and you kind of said, am I going to do it or not? And you did. Whereas a little more structured growth of, here's what we want to do, and you launched it. So whether you're on either end of the scale, these folks can actually be good potential, sounding boards or mentors for you. And I just volunteered you for something you didn't volunteer for. But I wanted to ask a little bit about that because each of you have brought up the important role in our conversation around having mentors, coaches, a peer development group. Talk a little bit about that, because business owners, it's lonely at the top. And as you decide to grow, that is a key inflection point in your business. It's a hard thing. Getting started was hard. The next phase is hard. And so talk a little bit about how you had support. Not all at once, though.
Well,
Go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. Well, like for my wife and I starting out, it was just our own research. We would go abroad. We'd check out what everybody else was doing. And then once we've gotten started, we joined local guilds that help bring these people to us. We got the Tito's of the world that, we can look up to. They can give knowledge, or Garrison Brothers and all the bigger guys. So we're able to tap into that resource, which helps us. Now, I don't know if y'all have guilds or different things like that y'all can dive into, but it helps us.
Yeah, for me, I tell people, a small town family business, you do what you do because that's what you're told to do when you're growing up in it. And when I left home to go learn about how to grow this thing or make it better, in my opinion, I thought that was great. I'm going to come home, we're all going to be aligned, and we're going to go conquer the world. And change can be a 4-letter word, even to the owner of the company. And so growth can be a 4-letter word even to the owner of the company. And so I learned early on that I didn't know everything I needed to know within those four walls in Elgin, Texas, and I had to reach outside. And so I found peer advisory groups that I could be a part of. Vistage is one that I was a part of for 18 years. Sat on a board. We met monthly, 18 different business owners, non-competing industries, just to be able to bounce ideas off of each other. We had a facilitator who was my business mentor, who worked for Jack Welch at one point in his career. So when he was kicking my butt, I knew he had his butt kicked by the best. And it was humbling to me because I'm walking into this room of business owners, and all of them have businesses bigger than mine. None of them smell like smoke. And I had to sit
Even
up
barbecue
straight.
smoke.
Yeah. I have to sit up straight and bring my A game. And then I realized the guy running a $300 million company has the same problem that I have. And when I can help him with that problem, it's like a huge shot to my ego of like, wait a second, maybe I can do this. Maybe I do deserve a spot at this table. And so I think going outside of your comfort level, finding mentors, finding folks you can bounce ideas off of in a safe place is extremely critical. And that can happen through these types of organizations, or it can happen close to home. You know, I'm fortunate enough to be able to sit on several boards in our community that are near and dear to our community. And man, I learn from them. I get to give a little bit of input, but selfishly for me, I learn every day. And I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, I think the peer groups, and I have several mentors that are in my industry, and I recommend everybody have some mentors and be a mentor.
Yeah. And oftentimes mentors aren't they don't know our industry, but they can help us when we have that problem. I like to say in our coaching practice, I'm like, you cannot dump on your team, or you're not a good leader, and you can't dump on your spouse, or you won't have a spouse for very much longer. And so it's really critical to have that person that you can share with. And it's not often a therapist, because it's a business issue, right? But to have someone that you can kind of relate to, be the sounding board and share with as, you know, as you're growing your business, that's really critical. At this time, do we have anybody who wants to ask a question before we have just a few minutes left? I want to make sure, we got some questions over here. I want to make sure we get them in before.
While the mic's going there, can I say something real quick?
Absolutely.
Steve and I were talking before this sit down, in that, you know, he asked me, how have y'all grown? How have you funded that growth? Have you gone out for partners? And I think as you're going down the process of deciding, you know, grow or sell or whatever, you know, that's a critical thing to go through. And so for us, we haven't brought on outside partners. And that's been, part of it's control, but part of it's we've got a great partner, and we use community bank. And so for us, First National Bank here in Bastrop, you know, has helped us through that whole process. And that's kept us from needing to go outside of the family, you know, or our core team, to decide how to grow. And they've also been one of those mentors. And so if you got to have that equal exchange, I guess. And so if you're going to give a lot of risk, and you know, it's not just cash that you're getting from whoever you're going out to invest in, or invest in you to grow your business, you got to have a partner that's going to help you do that. And so I think that's critical.
You mentioned community banks, and as a business owner, before becoming a business owner, I didn't realize how important and critical the relationship with your banker could be. And several of them are smiling at me going, yeah, sing it, Dominica.
We have time for only one or two questions, so we'll start in the back here.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Jimmy Bryan. I also own a law firm that does primarily business litigation transactions. And my question is, how did y'all find people that had more specialized skills in Bastrop County? Because we have to compete with Travis County, which typically, if we offer the same benefits, we still have to compete with the drive time for people coming from Travis County. So that would be my question.
That's more one of y'all's questions.
Yeah.
Well, for us, it's been a tremendous advantage to live so close to Austin, you know. We don't want to be weird, but we're glad to be close to weird, I guess. It's a great place to live when people are coming from other parts of the world, and that's kind of, they set up shop there. But it's an easy drive out here to Bastrop County. And so that's been a tremendous advantage for us. I know business owners in the meat industry and the restaurant industry and little towns elsewhere that don't have that base of that workforce. And so we want to grow from within, and we want to grow here close to home. But to have all those people 20 miles to the west is an advantage. And most of the time, it's quicker for them to drive to Elgin or Bastrop to come to work than it is to stay in Austin and go to work. And so quality of life matters.
We had another question over here.
Yeah, I got one question for all four of you. My name is Josh Shepard. I'm with Concept, and we're trying to build a product development agency. But my question is regarding product market fit. What were some early indicators that y'all saw to indicate that you've achieved a product market fit and make that leap to go all in on one particular product or a direction for the company?
Well, like with us, I guess we kind of fit in that for you. You know, when we started out, well, I always say this, I've been doing it 17 years, I'm 9 years legal. And everybody would sit in my garage and go, man, you ought to do this. It took several years before I realized, you know, people keep coming back drinking my stuff. I guess I'm doing all right. And so that's when we started pushing more into the market. But here again, for us, it's just tracking ourselves. And if they're going up, we're doing something right, you know.
Is there another question?
Yeah, we'll do one more.
Eugene with Empower Electric, and this question is for you, Tim. What stage in your company's growth did you realize it was time to shift from being a hands-on operator to building systems that could scale with you? And how did you start that transition?
It's tough, right? When you're trying to bid work, do work, you're working around the clock. And so for me, it was, I would look at the things that were taking up most of my time, and then I would hire somebody to do that, and then train them to do that. And then inevitably something else would take up most of my time, and I would hire somebody to do that. And you know, it was just it's a process of team building, and eventually you get to the point where you filled all of those roles and built that team. And then I met with all of them and said, okay, I built my team, now you go build yours. And it just compounded and continued to grow. Because I had this idea that I wanted to know every single person that was working for us, whether they were an apprentice in the field or a vice president. I wanted to know everything about them. And you kind of got to let go of that a little bit and put trust in. I might not know this journeyman pipe fitter, but this guy that I hired does. And he'll be an asset to our team. And it's just a process.
Thank you. I see that we have Becky on stage shooing us off. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to answer our questions. Please visit their businesses, catch them in the audience and ask them your question, because I know you have a bunch more. And we really appreciate you fellas taking the time to share with us. Thank you.